Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Abe with MysticGenmara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And tonight, whenever you happen to see this, I would like to offer a book review for basically a part 2. The first one that we did a couple weeks ago, and I'll link it in the description, is this one here. It's the Dancing with Dragons by DJ Conway. And it's a way to just kind of introduce yourself to working with dragons if you've never had that experience and you've always been kind of curious. The way she introduces it with that one is more of a way to introduce and invite them in a gentle way, kind of get to know each other a little bit better. And so that one is a lot more about building that spiritual relationship. With the second one, and I say second, it was the second book written in this set, second one I purchased as well, so is the Mystical Dragon Magick, Teaching of the 5 Inner Rings. So it's this one right here, and it's kind of an interesting setup the way she did this one. She broke it down in 5 full chapters. Part 6 is an epilogue basically, so it's not, I wouldn't call it a full chapter. But in section 1, you're learning about the way of the apprentice and how to kind of step into this world of working with dragons for mystical or magical purposes. But part of the apprenticeship stage is you learn the basic practices in her view of dragon ethics, which little seen gets more done, so you're not out there bragging about what you're doing is one of them. Silence and magic are both needed, meaning you don't want to make a lot of noise while you're doing this stuff. And the other part that I thought was interesting, and I'm not reading all of them because there's like 10 or 12 of them here, it says you color your own light. You're the one that's doing the creation here. You're the one that's drawing in the spiritual energies. So it's really about you and learning more about yourself, allowing you to make the connection. And in this first section, you go through, there's several meditations in here. One of the ways you can work with the meditations is you can physically record them, like you read them off, pausing and breathing as you need to read them out loud, and then you listen to them back, so you create your own guided meditation. Or if you're someone who can really focus, you can actually like read the section and allow yourself to go through the initiation that way. And that one's a little more tricky, but so it's a lot easier just to record them for yourself so you can actually perform them. Then it goes through the basic colors of how you're interacting with the different dragons. There's a section in here on page 35 of this version that talks about magical clothing and your ritual tools as an apprentice. And each stage, they talk about a different tool. So the apprentice one, I should have highlighted that, sorry. Basically, they're saying for apprentice you need a 3-foot square of cloth, a decorated pillow, something to place on the ground instead of an altar. Or if you have an altar, that's even better. So you really want to get that the center of your space built with this. She also recommends an astrological calendar, which I will put a link in the description as well, because there is one that I really truly love. I've been using it literally for probably 20 years now. It was one of the first ones I found that actually was accurate, and it tells you how to adjust for different time zones. For like mountain time, I think it's you adjust 1 hour over from, because it's published in Central, so that's how you would do that. And then they're also recommending a little chest of drawers or some kind of little cabinet so you can put all your magical dragon goodies in it. And you don't have to have a massive amount of tools. These are just recommendations of what she has found to be the most functional for her. One thing that I will say, if you're going to go down the path of metaphysics, mystics, esoteric, any of that, you need to have kind of a book of shadows, which is, I've talked about these a little bit before. And the way she says is just go buy a 3-inch 3-ring binder and get the clear sheets and buy a bunch of paper. It's the easiest way to do it. You can buy the fancy journals and all that stuff too. Be aware that being able to rearrange the things you're putting in your binder and divide them by different categories is really convenient. That's why the 3-ring ones are better than just the general journals. I've done both ways, and I'll tell you right now, I've got journals that are so unorganized, strictly because I can't move the stuff that I need to move. So those are some basic, simple parts of the first section. Then she goes through the different worlds that you can deal with. It's kind of like building your own map of the world, which is very handy in a lot of ways, because you get to see how you interpret the energies of the different planes of existence. For example, this is her version here. So she's got the middle world, the upper world, lower world. This vector over here goes to the void, and we have the highest aspect of consciousness and the underworld. There's a realm for fairies, for dragons, for astral keepers, the Akasha, seers, spellweavers, and so you've got a whole bunch of, that's how she sees it, and that's why she's like, this is mine. Figure out how you would interpret things, because each one of us is going to see something a little bit different. Well, like I said, it's the beauty of mysticism, the esoteric, is, yes, you study, you use other people's tools, you gain knowledge. By that, you start to write your own script. And that's where a lot of your, as I've talked about different Wiccan groups over the time of on here, a lot of them, once you get to a certain point, like the elder aspect, you can hive off. You carry certain tenets of the base group, but you can adjust and grow as your hive shifts and changes. So you really do have a lot of creativity with this, keeping it ethical and morally upright, you know. And then there's a ritual to attract your personal guiding dragon, and then you how to respect the dragon name. A dragon will give you a name. Generally, you'll get 2 different names. One is the casual one, like if you're with other people who are in the same group type of a thing, your public name is one thing. Then there's the personal one. And with that one, that is strictly between the 2 of you. That is not to share with other people, and it is a different name. Now, the dragon has a different name for you, too. It's not just the one that you say out there, Bobby, Billy, Susie, Sally. It's a different one. So you have this connection, and that's part of the secrecy of working with mystic spirits anyway. So be aware that there is that possibility. She goes through in a full ritual to do that. Talks about the different aspects of dragons that you may come forward with, which is like earth, air, fire, water, spirit. You also have chaos, light, dark, and void dragons, which all sound a little intimidating. A lot of those are going to be covered in this book. So if you are into this kind of dragon work, these 2 are really good starter primers. So you go through all of this, and then you get into the different layers. Different dragons are in different energy fields, and which one you're dealing with there. And then to close this one up, you have a few meditations and how to be safe when you're working with spiritual entities. That's always an important thing to remember whenever we step into the realm of spirit, is you have to make sure who you're calling in is actually for your highest good. So you want to make sure to double check the sections on protection. And it's not a huge section, it's like 5 paragraphs. And it's just kind of a way to remember everything that we do in life, there's always risk. This is one of those areas. I love to joke with one of my friends who is an adrenaline junkie. They love to risk their physical body, and they've already broken multiple bones. And then they look at what I'm doing, and they're like, that's more scary. Well, in a way, you just pick your adrenaline. This kind of stuff can be amazingly rewarding, but also there's the degree of risk. And anyone who tells you it's all love and light and unicorn farts probably wouldn't listen to too much of what they say, because there is always challenge, risk, and things like that come with working with this type of energy. So and then it goes through an actual apprenticeship ritual where you get to meet your dragon and kind of get to know each other better. Then you go into the second part 2, and I just lost my bookmark, sorry. And part 2 is the Dragon Enchanter. This section is going to be the second ring, and this is more about working with the various magical premises that you will use. There is a section in here on herbs. There's a section on stones and crystals. There's ways to make different powder blends. There's an earth blend if you work with earth dragons. There's an air blend if you work with air. There is a fire blend for fire and a water blend for water. And then there's also just an all-over dragon powder, so you can use that kind of to call in all of them, or whoever happens to be available to be supportive that day. She talks about essential oils, which essential oils, I will say, are fun to work with. Be aware that there's some of them that are very aggressive. Like, you don't really want to apply cinnamon oil directly to your skin unless it's diluted, because it can be very caustic. And there's a few other ones, and she talks a little bit about that. Like, these are all things to use for fragrance or for like dressing candles. Normally you don't use them to anoint with unless you really know what you're dealing with. She goes through a bunch of blends: dragon's blood, cinquefoil, High John the Conqueror, things like that. And then you can blend your own earth, air, fire, water. So she really likes the elements, which is one of the reasons I've been drawn to DJ's work. She goes through the concept of fluid condensers, which it's basically you're using the condenser instead of essential oil, so it vapors off a lot faster. They're not hard. Let's see, how does she say to make these? Oh, she doesn't say. That's cool. Most of them, it's not that difficult. Oh, there we are. She says to heat your water, put a lid on tight with all the herbs in it, let it simmer, continuing to heat it, low temperature obviously, for about 15 minutes. Strain out the herbs, squeeze the liquid from the herbs back into the pot, and then you basically condense that extremely dark tea down. So that one's a fairly simple condenser, which is nice. And you can use that instead of essential oils if you have, if it's more affordable to do condensers than oils, go that route. Talks about candle magic as well, what candles to use for what purposes. And then there's an entire, about 10 pages of basic spells. We have the Welcome the Dragons chant with a charm. There is a Halt of Evil. We have Conquer in Court and Legal Matters. And I will say I find it a little bit interesting. She is one, and then there's one other person that I've read a lot of their work, and they always have a section for how to deal with the law and legal stuff. It's kind of makes you wonder what happened in their previous life or part of their life that triggered that specific need going forward, because there's two different groups and they both have these sections in them. How to break bad luck. There's confusing your enemies. And that's some of the protection stuff. How to get luck in business or gambling. I don't recommend gambling. And then she goes into things that are obstacles and how to break through your obstacles, and that can always be a trick as well, because obstacles are fun. And then just kind of bonding with your dragon, getting friendship, working with new moon, full moon energies. And then she gets into more of the crystals and stones aspect. And that's where, if you've worked with crystals and stones, it's kind of a refresher. It's nothing really special or new, but it is nice to see how she incorporates them into, like, this elemental dragon works best with this type of stone, so it makes it easier to work with the energies of these various dragons. Then we move into chapter 3, or section 3, which is the Dragon Shaman, and this is where we start getting into the energies of inner work, spiritual work, and healing, because a shaman works on the spiritual level to heal the soul. And I want to do a video one of these days on shamanism, because the modern day definition and the modern day practice, we'll call, is very, very distant from what the original shamans were. And so when you start to look into it from a deeper perspective, using that term here seems a little disingenuous, but it's not meant that way. She meant it genuinely. This is how she felt. So I'm not arguing that, but I do want to talk about the actual roots of shamanism at some point, because it's a lot more fascinating and a lot more complicated than how they make it out today. You don't choose to be a shaman. A shaman is chosen by the gods and the spirits. So that's different subject, different day. Anyway, dragon seasons, and it's interesting because they only talk about the 4 primary Sabbats in here: spring equinox, summer solstice, autumn equinox, and winter solstice. They don't go through all of the cross-quarter days like Beltane, Samhain, any of that. It's not even referenced in most of this book. I think it's mentioned maybe once. So it's not a key thing. Then we go through the divination aspects. She has an entire set of dragon script and runes, which you can make yourself, which is a lot of fun. There's talking about how to use planets for different magical practices. And then you have the Starborn Dragon clans. Some of these, instead of being earth, air, fire, water dragons, this is where you get into the light, dark, chaos, void, etc. Chaos, cloud, fire, heart, the mystic star, which is one of the mystery school teachers. Rainbow dragons, the savage dragons, which are more your warrior types. There's snow dragons, and then you have a star moon, and these ones are a little different. I have not actually had interactions with them, so I don't know, like, as far as that action goes. There's Astra Keeper, there's like the Time Flight, and then there's your Web Weavers. Again, Web Weavers are the ones that help weave fate, and if you've looked into the Greek history, the 3 fates were some of the most terrifying beings you could ever be around. So the Web Weavers are ones I would say be the most respectful with, because you never know what they might just decide to reweave in your life. And that's not to say that they're petty, it's just be respectful when you're dealing with that kind of energy, because there's a lot of power behind those. We also get into the planetary different dragons and the colors that they work with. She even has a list of different dragons that she has met, and their names are in here. Obviously the ones that are willing to be named. Then there's a meditation with a dragon council, which I will say that's kind of a fun meditation to do, because you get to meet a whole bunch of dragons, even if you don't remember their name, because you get to sit in on one of the big council sessions, or they may even call it just so they can introduce themselves to you. So those can be a lot of fun. And then at the end of that one, there's an initiation with the shaman. Then we go into section 4 with the Way of the Dragon Warrior. This is where we get into a lot more of your deeper practices. She states here, the Dragon Warrior is one who defends the truth, neutralizes or binds harmful energies, and if possible, returns all curses to senders or grounds the curses into the earth to be cleansed and released without harm. So you do have a lot of, and I found this to be true with a lot of paths when you really dig into them. There comes a point when you've fixed a lot of the stuff in your life using, occult or metaphysical purposes, and then you get called to help and guide and work for other people. Usually the other person doesn't know. Sometimes they will come to you and, discuss things. Again, use judgment and discernment on that. But then you get into feeling led to work to heal a waterway, being led to send positive energy or to reevaluate a situation. And then you really start getting into the deeper parts of spiritual warriorship, and that's what this section is talking about. There's a meditation in here. Then they talk about different shapes. They call it star pattern magic, but it's like the knot of eternity, the pentagram, a hexagram, the elven star, which is a 7-pointed star, and you've got all of these different stars that you get to basically learn the purposes of, how to use them, figuring out the discernment. This section here gets into more of your shadow work, levels of evil, the dark areas of the underworld, because to understand, and I've said this before, to understand the light, you really need to know what's going on in the dark. Doesn't mean you stay there, but you do need to understand it, because to truly to appreciate the light, you're not going to fully appreciate that unless you went through basically a dark period. If you look to, like, even the biblical Psalms, yea though I walk through the valley of the shadow of evil, or shadow of death, those are aspects of you still have to go through the dark, and then you accept and see the light. So it's always a growth period there. And then you also get into working with your dragons to help you discover your physical, spiritual animals, which can be kind of fun. Um, she talks a little bit about shape shifting in here and the concept of the berserker. I will say I don't fully agree with her view on that. So it's not negative in that respect. It's just not the way I've understood those terms. So you can take it or leave it. That little section there, if you're curious, is on 213. And then there's, again, the initiation at the end. So each section of this you get to go through, and you can read it all the way through and then go back through and do the exercises. But each time you do the exercise and go through the chapter, that at the end there is, how well did you understand this? And it's not a question and answer on paper. It's a question and answer with the spiritual energies you've been working with. So it's not as easy to fake. Then section 5, the Dragon Mystic. And this is where you kind of put everything together. This is where you bring in the newest of your ritual tools. And usually with this one, it's talking about the different wands or the crystal batteries that we need to use for different purposes. They talk about the different styles of crystals, double terminated and Herkimer diamonds and stuff like that. So you get, again, basic information on a lot of that, because this book's not going to give you all the answers. It's guiding you on your journey. Your journey is, how far do you want to go? Where do you want to go? And how deep do you want to fly down this rabbit hole? And it's always a good experience when you do have these journeys, because you walk away, even if it's something you're like, okay, I did that once, I'm done. You walk away changed, generally for the better, and you walk away saying, now I understand more. Knowledge is power, and knowledge gives you a great deal of understanding. And by that, you actually get to open your mind and your eyes to another viewpoint, if nothing else. And so that's why I kind of do the book reviews on the texts like this, is because it's, if nothing else, it's an interesting read. So she talks about ways to scry different mystic oils. And then I love the title of this section. It is Learning to Change Your Life. Don't wait to see what the future dumps on you. Create your own future with deliberate, planned intent. And that's where you really start to step into the aspect of a mystic. A lot of people think, oh, mystics, you're just someone who reads tarot, and that's part of it. But mystic, the term mystic, in my opinion, is someone who has learned, educated, become aware of the world around them, physical, spiritual, mental, etc., and then they start to apply their divine, capital W will, to that, to mold it to a future that is best for them. You're not competing with somebody else. You're not altering their future, because that goes down a dangerous road you don't want to play with. But you're fixing yours. You're allowing yourself to heal, to shift, to grow. You're the one in control. You're changing your own life. And that's one of the lessons when you work with angels, dragons, and some of these other spiritual entities. It always boils down to, how are you changing your life? What are you doing to fix things? And once you get your life heading in the right direction, you may feel inspired to work with or for others. So that's down the road. You start with you. You're the only person you can change. So work on that. And then it goes through the upper world meditation, and that's where you start to get into the light, dark, chaos, void, etc. dragons, which are significantly more interesting to work with, we'll put it that way. And then you get to, there's a section in here that talks about the High Elders meditation. This is basically where you start to be initiated into the higher aspects of dragon mysticism and magic. And when I say higher levels, it's not like they're going to bestow upon you this world-changing power today. They're saying, you know what? You've been through all of this. We're going to work with you. See how this turns out. You can leave at any time. We're not going to force you to do anything. But here's where we're at. And then that's the end. That section there is on 236. And then it goes into just the epilogue and everything. But I do say I love this picture of DJ. She's such a happy person there. And she says, a native of the Pacific Northwest. She's made the occult field a lifetime quest and study. And she's literally, I've read a lot of her different various works. She's very eclectic because she doesn't stick to just to one thing. But my personal preference with a lot of her stuff is how she brings forward dragons and makes them still keep their mystique, but also reminds us that they're not just in fairy tales. And people don't want to talk about this, that's fine. But in a spiritual concept, they're still flying around. They're still there to support us. Feng Shui is one of the energies in Eastern mysticism that talks about it. Basically, you're manipulating the dragon energy, quote unquote, in your house. Why would they still call it that? I mean, obviously there's a tradition there, but we still have a lot of our old stories. I mean, you can look back through the history of the different churches. You can look back through the history of the different religious beliefs. Dragons have always been there. In one way or another, you will see them everywhere. A lot of the old art, and I love looking at it, has dragon imagery in it. There's something there. Whether it's physical or spiritual, there was something that they were fully aware of. And so when you start to work with books like Dancing with Dragons or this one, or your Mystical Dragon Magick, you start to understand that these beings, are powerful as all get out. Not angelic, but definitely way above us. But they're also here to work with us. Dragons can be very serious and very stern, and I've ran into those. But you also have the ones that are more friendly, more playful. You might even meet a dragon baby or a little hatchling, and they, in the lore, a lot of the times, the ones I've talked to, the babies stay babies for like 20 years. So they don't really mature quickly. So you might have an experience like that, and it's always something unique, something different, something fun, and it's always a different way to view the world. So go exploring with your dragon friends if you really want a different perspective. If you're already in something metaphysical and mystical, this is a way to add to it and maybe enhance something that you haven't tried before. So with that, like, comment, and subscribe. If you've read this particular book or the other one, Dancing with Dragons, let me know your thoughts. I'm kind of curious to see and hear what other people's experiences have been. My personal ones with her stuff, like I said, I don't agree with everything she says, but I do like the premise of how she interacts with these beings. So let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video.